Dylan here in Albuquerque. Dylan, you're live here on Truth Wanted. Hope you're ready. What is up?
Hi, Dylan. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going, bud?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Although I misplaced the notes I had written, so I kind of had to rewrite it real quick while I've been on hold.
Don't feel bad. I do that all the time.
Listen, that's more note taking than 99% of the people who call into this show. So you should feel good about that.
There you go.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I guess I wanted to continue the conversation we were having before, and I guess the best thing to do would be to kind of restate quickly what I had said before.
Yes.
Because obviously the Lavender Lady wasn't on, and you probably have some new listeners or whatever.
Absolutely. Context is always welcome on this show, please.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, so I'll start off with the same two questions I asked last time. And I already have your answers, Dan, so this can be more specifically towards the Lavender Lady.
Yes, sir.
And these are not trick questions. Hopefully Dan will vouch for me on that. So the first would be, do you believe there are too many people on Earth? Human beings. Are there too many human beings? Yes. Okay.
Absolutely, I do.
And do you also believe that all babies deserve love?
Yeah, let's give them let's give them the benefit of the doubt before they prove themselves to be arseholes. Let's give them the love.
Yeah,
because I'll go for that.
Until you prove that you're an asshole, while you're a baby, you totally still deserve it. Or even a child, I would say, children, if you're still school age, not yet a teenager or whatever. I don't know where exactly the cutoff would be, but yeah, I think generally young people, in my opinion, all are equally deserving of love and comfort, luxuries. I don't think there's any child that doesn't deserve to have a nice life.
I wish more did. I really do. And I wish more kids had a good life.
Me too. I think, and that's kind of what me and Dan were talking about, and kind of the crux of this whole discussion.
Okay, let's hear it.
This was, the idea is that maybe as a society, here in America in particular, is my view, we should discuss adoption before biological births.
Okay.
I'm not saying that everyone has to do that. I just think it should at least be a discussion. I think adoption should be normalized and a lot more common.
Well, yes. being an adopted child myself, I'm with you. Adoption really should occupy a preeminent place in people's minds, because if you're not adopting, if you're having the biological kid every time you want a kid, you're doing two things. First thing you're doing is another mouth to feed. And the second thing you're doing is another lonely kid who would really like a family out there and who's not getting one because he, she, whatever is not being adopted. Yeah, I think I'm following you, and I think I'm pretty much agreeing with you so far.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like this was maybe the right time to call. I was worried.
Yay! I like it.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the position of anti-natalism? Is that something you've been acquainted with, or you're familiar with?
Is that something that goes along with the voluntary human extinction thing?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I am familiar then, if that's where we're going. Yeah. Because I do know of the voluntary human extinction project, where it's basically, okay, let's just quit having kids and eventually the human race will die out, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I kind of agree with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't have as many objections to that as some people would, I'm sure. But yeah, if you look up anti-natalism online, most of the sources will just describe if you're an anti-natalist, you are a baby hater and you hate human beings and you don't think
No,
everyone's
absolutely
just
not.
garbage and you should
Yeah.
right.
No, I don't
So-
see you hating babies if you're an antinatalist. No. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking there's that possibility that you actually love the babies that are not being brought into the world to suffer. That might be one way to look at it.
So there is that idea as well. That is how the anti-natalists themselves, some people would defend their position. But so here's what the common definition of anti-natalism is it's
Okay.
a philosophical position that assigns a negative value to birth. And I think that is a perfect analogy for what the ACA has been doing with the common definition of atheist. The common definition of atheist is just a person who lacks belief or a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know that argument so well. Yes, I know David Silverman versus Steve McRae. I can tell you about both sides of that.
For sure.
So it's kind of my goal here, and I mentioned this the last time we talked, Dan, that I think anti-natalism is in due of a facelift. It's time to redefine the word. It's time to take it back and make it a positive social movement.
Yeah. I agree with you.
The way I would define anti-natalism, or my neo-anti-natalism maybe, I don't know how people are going to take, trying to define something that already has a definition, whatever. But I think the way I view it is my position is that I would assign a negative value to population growth, or even at this point, a population plateau, because we have too many people on the planet.
I'm with you. I am definitely with you.
So I think and this is kind of my goal, is to normalize adoption and to normalize this idea that having babies is not, the ultimate human purpose or whatever. If you want to raise children, that's still a very noble thing. But I would make the argument that it's even more noble to adopt than to have a biological child.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Jen with one N mentioned, it's a lot more difficult to qualify to adopt a child than it is to simply pop one out. Now, I'm not going to say that what you go through to qualify to adopt a child is fail-safe. I'm not going to say that it's infallible. In my case, in the case of my sister, we didn't have such a great childhood. That's a story for another book. But okay, that's one case where it failed. But still, the system as a whole is a lot better than simply pop one out and then mistreat that one.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about last time too with Dylan, was like, well, yeah, like and we're definitely not even saying like every single person should be able to adopt. I've certainly met some kids who's from families that it's like, I wish they didn't adopt that kid. I think that they, weren't the best influences as parents for people. And that's certainly something to consider too. But I think, we're probably all on the same page here when we agree that adoption is seen, at least in this country, as kind of just a secondary option. It's not really people's first go-to. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's treated as a kind of backup plan. Like, oh, if it turns out that we're infertile, then we'll just go the adoption route. And
that's
not something that, of course, everybody wants to change the world. Like, everybody wants to give society new norms. And I would love to give society this norm of, hey, not only is adoption something that you should consider first, but we should consider it something that is noble and something that is good and something that we could positively portray. And not to say that adoption has, it's gotten mixed, looks over the years, I suppose. But like, I'd say we're at a point now where it's like, we talk about like veganism, for example. There's so much like disparaging remarks made about vegans and stuff in media because of how much they talk about veganism, this, and that. And like the anti-natalist, I feel like is kind of in a similar boat. It's like whenever it's depicted in popular light, as you said, it's the same kind of problem where it's like if you actually talk to most vegans or if you actually talk to most anti-natalists, they're pretty chill about it. And vegans are doing what they do for the most part for ethical reasons, and we're doing what we do for ethical reasons as well. We have philosophical ideals as to why we want what we want, and that's not often, given the light of day that it certainly deserves. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where having more one-on-one conversations about this kind of stuff, especially with folks who are looking into starting families of their own. It always has to start with grassroots movements with these kinds of things. Of course, we got the internet where we can spread our messages as far and as wide as long as there's a computer out there. But yeah, for sure.
And if you have the viewers.
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously, we're going to be talking to people, at least people who watch this show and people who call in. Probably most of them are going to agree with our views, but we definitely want to think of ideas of how we can change people's minds otherwise, as far as what we think is a good idea for people. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And wow, it's just I'm stunned. So I can skip some more of these little side notes. Well, really, the next big point that maybe that's for another time. I think we could go into that idea of should people adopt? What does it take to be a good parent? How do you judge these things? I had a couple of things written down that, but my fiance wants to eat dinner. I'm getting hungry too. And,
okay. Here's what we should do next time, Dylan. I don't know what the criteria is, at least in the United States, and I guess there's state laws that apply to this stuff too, about what qualifications go into adopting folks, and like what are the exact processes, and that'd be an interesting conversation to have to see.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, how great those are. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert on that, but maybe that's something I need to look into for sure.
And Dylan, I want to thank you for this. I want to thank you for bringing this up, because I think this may have to be a topic for a future Coffee with Lavender, or something that I really hadn't thought of, but it's a very, very salient topic to bring up. The whole thing about adoption, and let's think more about it. Thank you.
Yeah. And,
thank you for giving me that idea.
And it's funny because if I'm going to be this advocate of like, I think more people should adopt, I think I should definitely be more of an expert on the criteria of how, most government systems actually do the adoption process, which I'm realizing now I'm not. And so, that's something I need to change for sure. So,
and there's also
there's a lot of variation. And it's pretty difficult in a lot of states, especially for atheists, which is something we mentioned last time.
Yeah.